Well, hey everybody, Louis Gallucci here. Thank you for joining us, and I am very excited today to have Jenny Wheeler from Work Partners as our guest. She is someone I can humbly say is much smarter than I am. We go way back with Jenny and her team, 10, 15 years or so. Full disclosure, they're amazing partners of ours. They do amazing work and really on a national basis are very well respected in the fields of data warehousing, analytics, predictive modeling, all the stuff that makes a health plan behind the scenes really run well. They're one of the best in the field nationally. And Jenny, if you don't mind, we'd love to learn just a little about you, your background, and after that, a little bit about Work Partners, if that's okay.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for inviting me. This is fun. This is a great way to spend the morning, so I do appreciate that. Hello, everybody. I am Jenny Wheeler. I am the Associate Vice President of Integrated Analytics for Work Partners, which is a mouthful. So we'll uncover what all that means. By background, I am educated. I'm a finance major with a master's in business administration. So I found my way into the world of analytics, and I've made a career really out of healthcare, health and productivity analytics, really focused on employers, employer organizations, and making that data really work for them. So you'll see the passion come out at some way, and hopefully the geek comes out in others as we go through. So thank you.
It's not fun unless we get a little geek out mode on these sorts of meetings. So this is perfect.
I accept that challenge.
We'll keep this informal and just a conversation. And if you don't mind, a little bit more, if you could share about Work Partners, kind of the spaces that you serve, large, complex self-funded employers, that'd be great, just for the audience to kind of hear what y'all are doing out there.
Perfect. Yes, happy to do so. So Work Partners is a unique organization serving mid to large self-insured employers. What's unique about it is the breadth of our administration services. So analytics, of course, is the service line that I head up, and I think we'll talk more about that. But we also offer well-being services, absence, disability, and workers' compensation as a means to deliver value to employers. And selfishly, it really helps the analytics line of business, because when you're an administrator, you got to know that data. You got to know how to use it and how to understand it and how to get the maximum benefit out of it. So that really fuels what we do on the analytics side and how we bring data and information to our clients. So we've been in the business for a while, where we might be a more of a secret than others have been aware of, but I appreciate the partnership we've had with you, Louis, over the years to really bring value to employers. Specifically for analytics, if you wanted me to chat a little bit about what is that when you say we sell that as a service, is that
yeah,
work?
I mean, I suppose for those that maybe aren't familiar with self-funded plan architecture and data stuff, I guess that if we could go over the basics, so like data warehousing, how do you build that foundation? Advanced analytics, predictive modeling, clinical, high-risk intervention. If you don't mind sharing just some of the basics that are kind of the ante into this sort of a space, that'd be awesome for the audience.
Yes, happy to do so, and keep reining me in if I'm going a little left or right here.
You're good.
I appreciate it. Yeah. So, when I talk to self-funded groups, the punchline is that this data is yours to do something with, right? Yes, it's great to have your vendors provide you annual reports and their recommendations, but it really is yours to try and wrangle and do something with. And that's where Work Partners can really come in and to help, especially when we're partnered with an advisory group like Louis and team. But what we do is we offer data warehousing. So that means our expertise is in wrangling that data from all your different carriers. They could be national carriers, they could be regional, they could be startups, they could be all over the place. And we come in and we make that connection and get that data directly from them so that we can bring it in-house, clean it, make sure it's accurate, make sure it's coming in consistently. And we do what we call data curation and enrichment, right? It's not just exactly what came in the door is the only thing under the roof, right? We try and enrich the data so that when it's served up or we're using it for modeling or what have you, it's more usable, right? So that's part of the initial service that is you're self-funded. This is your data. You want to kind of take ownership of it.
And I have a little bit of a loaded question here. I know the answer, but I want you to answer it. What would you say, is there really a difference if we're working, let's say, a client's working with a BUCA, and they say, hey, we have tons of data we can provide you. We have our own warehousing here at Anthem, Cigna, Aetna, blah, 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 blah. How is that different than what, a true independent model like yourself would provide?
Love it. Is a loaded question, and we could spend the rest of the show. But yeah, carriers are going to be good at knowing their own data, but they aren't necessarily your source of truth for all the things that you want to uncover. So that alone, and being able to look at that and uncover, opportunities that maybe shows where there could be some decreases in waste or extra spend or whatnot, is one part of why you want an independent view of the world. And then we also, we have what we think are unique data enrichment pieces that come to the table. So we create our own risk score at an individual level, and we can chat more about, well, why the heck would I need that, and how will that change my life with my self-funded management life? So things like that, we believe we bring to the table. Yeah.
And I've always thought of it as, data for the sake of data, so we can have really nice looking reports, sophisticated reports that we bring into meetings. That's great. And the outcome of that is we have really nice looking reports that we can bring into meetings. But data for the sake of data, who cares at that point? It's always been kind of our philosophy on that. Unless actionable items can be derived from data, what are we really doing other than to have pretty reports? It has to lead to something that has results, that bends the needle on risk, expense, whatever. And there's a variety of different goals that data can lead into. But you touched on something that I think is super important, and it's the concept of, no one's going to have context for this word. I'm going to say it anyways. A HUI score, a Human Capital Risk Index score, which essentially, for those of you not familiar with healthcare, you have a health plan, you got employees, spouses, kiddos, you got a bunch of belly buttons in that plan, and there's all this data that you can, as Jenny described, they collect and they warehouse it over a number of years. Well, with that data, predictive modeling, so a score that's not just like, hey, like Louis Gallucci had cancer and it's really expensive. It's not so much that, it's Louis Gallucci has 10 doctors and he's diagnosed with 5 things and he's on 6 medications and he's getting a test a week. And the data is screaming at us that he's someone that could really, really benefit at, predictively before more catastrophic stuff manifests from paying attention, some sort of intervention or care. But can you talk us through, like, how does that work? Predictive modeling, like, what is that, and how do employers use that?
Yeah, I would love to. So I'll talk a little bit about the HUI score and how that's built, and that is a model. It's an output of a model that is predictive in nature because of how it's built. So like you said, it's diagnosis driven. And what we do is that at the first time that we see a diagnosis, we put the full weight of what could happen because of that diagnosis. And you start to look at examples of members, like you said, with 5, 6, 7 type of chronic conditions, 10, 12 different medications. They're seeing a variety of providers. They are going to be adding up real quick. So the HUI score takes all of that and normalizes it to 1. So you don't have to really have a hard time understanding. 1 is average risk. So if they're a 2, they're 2 times as risky as average. If they're under, they're half that, right? We like simple in terms of interpretation.
Simple-minded consultants like us can work with 1. That's like, okay, I get 1. Yeah.
I do as well. So what's great about it is that we run it for every single person, And if we do have additional lost time data, we add that to the model as well, which can be even more predictive if workplace injuries, for example, sometimes lead to a whole bunch of medical and other utilizations. So the Huey score is the output of a model that we run on every single person, and you can use it to identify those really complex people that it might not just be a diabetes program that's going to solve their problems, right? But then you can also see that rising risk. And I think that's really where you were honing into, Lewis. And I love that in terms of talking to folks about different strategies for that next rising risk, because that's really we wanted, avoiding getting people to that very complex space in healthcare. If we can avoid it, is really, I think, the strategy that most people are seeking. So if the Huey score can help us to at least try to stratify our population and offer, some programs or some interventions, I think that's a very helpful tool.
No, it's 100%. And, it's interesting because you just think of people are people and they come in and out of risk. Like life happens, things get kind of out of control. It is the healthcare system. You get lost in it. And, it's kind of like a mountain, right? So risk is like a mountain. And, the way we've always simply talked about it, this is dumbing it down quite a bit to our level, but it's essentially if you can cut off the top of the mountain, so identify who's trending towards that cost curve that's going to peak and, cut the mountain in half. They're still going to have claims, but if you can cut that mountain way back and have them recover and be active and, fully functioning quicker, yay God, that's an awesome thing. And that kind of leads to the next thing is how if the why behind the what on a lot of the strategy stuff in healthcare, it's like, hey, we want to lower cost, we want to help our people, we want them to be fulfilled and active and healthy and activated in all they're doing. But like, there's an ROI to all of that, of course. Can you talk us through how does that work? So let's say we have the Huey scores and it says, hey, this small number of people are going to bring the risk, or that this is where your cost and risk is coming from. Like, what does that normally look like? Like, is there a percent of claims you generally see or risk in a plan from that small little group that Huey score is pointing to?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a tool to help narrow in, to put it as simply as I can there, because people's costs and consumption of services isn't spread like peanut butter, right? It's not nice and smooth and easy, right? Fortunately, or else we wouldn't be self-funded. People wouldn't be self-funded, right? So there's there's the maldistribution, right? A few small percentage of people accounting for the majority of the costs, right? Your Pareto 80-20, you can think about it through that type of lens. And so the Huey score helps you narrow in. And in our research, it's more so about 5% of your any given covered population. 5% of the people are going to account for 50, 55, 60% of the costs. So as a strategy, it makes a whole ton of sense to narrow in on them first and understand how can we cut off the top of that mountain, right? Are they just so complex that they are trying to navigate this crazy healthcare system and seeing all of these specialists and not knowing which way to turn, right? Just even coordinating care can be a huge advantage in terms of reducing costs and utilization. Then if you can also get them connected into the right support, then potentially you're getting ahead of some additional comorbidities, confounding factors, things that just continue to get you up that mountain, to play off of your example there.
Yeah, no, I love it. So we empower a group by allowing them to own their own data, free them from the box, let's say, of an insurance carrier from a data perspective. And once they own it, they can do whatever they want with it. And with some of the tools we're talking about that work partners can bring to bear, analytics, predictive modeling via these predictive risk index scores for all, employees, spouse, kiddos, everybody on the plan.
Yep.
And by monitoring the variance in these risk scores, you can identify where cost is going to show up in a plan, where the risk is predictively. So not necessarily where it is today, but what the data suggests it's going to be, next month, in the next 3 months, whatever. And by doing that, that population you're saying is, hey, it's like 50 to 60%, varies by group, but it's a massive chunk of all the paid claims. When you get up market and self-funded plans, you're talking millions and millions of dollars. And so you have this population, and there's an opportunity to help them, right? From not so much a disease management perspective, which, full disclosure, we're not huge fans of disease management. But if you don't mind, talk us through high risk. So we now know predictively who these people are and that they'd really benefit from some, help, some love. Like, what does that look like in your world? And like, how can you even do that?
Yeah, we've seen a lot of different interventions for people that are trying to address that 5%, those folks that are driving the costs. And what we've seen as the most effective are interventions that are looking at them as people. Like you said, these are our workers, these are our peers, these are, our work family, if you will. Mm-hmm. And when they are dealing with many things happening, not just maybe they do have diabetes, right? But they might have 5, 6 other things. So managing that diabetes may not be what's the driver. It may be depression. It may be their cholesterol, maybe something else. And what we have found is that interventions that look at the whole person and support the whole person, and especially support the whole person and their family, right? Because that same person that has diabetes and depression and all these things could have a child that has special needs, or they could have cancer. They could have, there's a lot of terrible things that happen in the world, right? So if we can look at these people and understand that they're people and provide interventions to look at them holistically, we have found those to be the most effective when we're trying to understand, okay, if that intervention never existed, or if they would have something else, how would we know that it's because of this specific program or this specific thing? We have seen a lot more when you're dealing with whole person, complex people, and dealing with all of those support mechanisms be a lot more effective.
For sure. It's people are complex, aren't they?
They sure are.
And I mean, we've all been there, whether it's, stress in a marriage or difficulty with kids or financial stuff. We're multi-dimensional beings. It's not just physical ailments per se, though that's important, of course.
Yep.
All those other components of life can be underlying roots of what spits out in the data as claims and expense and risk. So that holistic approach, for sure, makes a ton of sense. And you all introduced us to that concept of a person-centric approach to intervention for these high-risk folks. And dear Lord, it works. And that's the next topic I want to talk about. That's super fun. So, all right. So you have a plan, you got all this data, we've empowered the employer, we've identified predictively high-risk populations in a plan. Mm-hmm. We do intervention, and there's outcomes. Well, how the heck do you know if all of that is even worth it? So talk us through, we're going to transition to ROI within a health plan. What the heck is that, and how does it work, and how do you know it's credible and you can present it to CFO or whatever and confidently say hey, this is what we did?
Yeah, we live that. That's a tough question, but there are approaches to getting yourself into a sound and effective evaluation that holds up to the CFOs in the room, in my opinion. So one of the other things that Work Partners does as we support clients and brokers like yourself is we continue to grow what we refer to as our benchmarking data warehouse that is used for research. We refer to it as our research reference database. And we're upwards to 6 million lives now of, like you said, employees and spouses and kids, people covered under commercial insurance as self-funded plans. So the reason I'm bringing that up, Louis, and of course you're familiar with the RRDB, is because we like acronyms here at Work Partners, is because we utilize it when we're evaluating or helping clients evaluate a program. And the reason that we do that is because there's a statistical term called regression to the mean, that if all you do is look at the people that go through a program, you can't, they're going to come back down to average at some point, however you want to define average for a group or a person, right? That's called regression to the mean. And that is what faces the most amount of criticism when someone tries to say pre-post, right? And they just say, before the intervention, it was this, after the intervention, it was this, and therefore there's savings, right? So that doesn't hold up super well. But when you approach it and say, okay, I'm going to take all of these 5% people with the high Huey risk scores that had an intervention, and I'm going to match them to people that look like them, age, gender, risk, right? And that didn't have an intervention. And you compare them and you trend them. And what you do mathematically is just take the difference. So you're saying, all things being equal, I'm taking the difference in them. And that's what you can hold as the effectiveness or the ROI, right? You'll want to factor in what you paid for a program, right? If you're doing the true math, right? But that difference is what holds up as an industry standard, really, and best practice for evaluating it. So you do need that other kind of group of people to match to that helps you get to that point.
Would a fair way to think about it, and I like to simplify things to pictures and stuff like that, is it's essentially you got millions and millions of people in this research reference database, all right, independent of the client, the employer. And you got the employer's self-funded plan. You got all this historic data, medical, pharmacy, absence, whatever's populating in there. And then you create essentially like a profile on these people that went through clinical intervention, right? These 5%ers that represent all the costs. And is it fair to say you're essentially reaching into that research reference database, finding a bunch of other, Louis Gallucci's, right, that fit my profile, have like, the demographics and all the similar characteristics where, okay, we now have 100 Lewis's that statistically are within an acceptable margin of error to where what happened to these folks in the database should be what we would expect as far as, that regression to the mean you talked about. This is what should happen. However, in this plan for our client, they recovered much quicker. Right. And so therefore you can determine, okay, that's worth X number of dollars and productivity and blah, blah, blah. Is that essentially it?
You nailed it. You nailed it. Yes.
The science behind that is insane. And I have nothing but respect for you guys that figure that out. It is amazing. It really is.
Well, when you get a lot of opinions about different types of approaches, you really narrow in to a best of breed, and you have an opinion and a recommendation on it. So if other people can benefit from all the ways in which we've tried to evaluate, then we're all for it.
I love it. All right. We're getting towards the end here, and I'm going to end with one that's a little bit of a hot potato. I know you're familiar with it. As you know, we have a mutual client that will remain anonymous. They're a large self-funded church that has adopted all the strategies we're talking about. So the data warehousing, the predictive analytics, the clinical, high-risk intervention on their 5%. And it's been wonderful. Their plan has performed phenomenally since we collectively started working with them. And there's a lot of fruit to show financially and with their people as far as the good that's done. It's an amazing case study. So they have all this in place, but it's a church, and prayer in the realm of churches and faith, and I'm in that camp as well, obviously, is a big deal. However, as far as we're aware, in the context to a group health plan, measuring prayer and the impact prayer has, the power of God via prayer, hasn't, as far as we're aware, that's never been measured formally in a way that's credible. And so one of the fun little projects that you guys have graciously agreed to kind of journey with us on is the project to measure the impact of prayer in the context of a self-funded health plan. And is there ROI? Is there productivity changes? How does that work? Now, a few quick things. And I don't want you to sugarcoat this in any way, shape, or form.
Okay.
You're familiar with the project, I know. The way we're doing this, as far as, you have these high-risk populations identified via the data, these predictive risk scores. But if you measure who got prayer, when they got prayer, what the prayer was for, and some clinical notes, right? With that, if that was a file into the data warehouse, which it's now becoming for this client, would you theoretically be able to measure in a statistically valid way the impact of prayer on a health plan. And it's a question: is that legit?
It's a loaded question, and there's a lot to unpack there. But like you said, we are willing to test and evaluate and learn. I think that's the most important thing. So I do applaud that. Let's try and measure this. Let's try and see if there's something there. And just for a little bit of background, when you're testing the impact for an employer, self-funded, certainly it's the cost piece, but you've mentioned it a few times, Louis, and I am completely on board. There's also the impact of being present, being productive, being at work. That has a financial cost to it as well. And so we also, from Work Partners and chatting with you, can quantify that as well for folks. And sometimes, you can do it as a straight productivity or from a customer satisfaction or whatever you have. So that is another thing of the value you can bring from an outcomes perspective. But the prayer part of this and the capture, to me, falls under the category of self-reported data. And there is a good amount of pros and cons to self-reported data, just like you would do a food log or an activity tracker or something like that, right? In essence, it's a similar data feed to those. So to me, there's no reason to discount it. It will face just as much criticism as any other self-reported data set, right? That you can't technically outside measure it, but that is something that we can continue to evaluate.
And the way it's being captured, to clarify, is through their new wellness program. And so there's coaches that are documenting that the prayer, they're facilitating the prayer with the member, and then documenting that as a vendor, kind of like the high risk intervention would. Not clinical. They're not clinical. It's wellness coaches. However, that's just so you know, that's how it's being facilitated. So it's a documented event with the member. And again, who got prayer, what the prayer was for, the time, the day, etc.
So then I view this in addition, I mean, it's happening together, right? So it is similar to getting a clinical feed. Let's just call it clinical or a wellness feed, right? A wellness feed, because you're saying nurses, they're well-being coaches. And I do applaud that as a step up in terms of the accuracy of the data that we would pull together. So I think that helps the credibility factor for this as well in terms of the evaluation. So then the other, I guess, critique that people will come into is the concept of confounding factors, right? How are you isolating that it is because of this thing? So there's a couple other techniques that likely we can explore to do that. But like you said, if you're able to match people, you're able to dip into the RRDB for people that look just like Louis Gallucci, right? And try other statistical techniques to control for the other factors that might be making some noise or impacting the outcomes, then your evaluation can hold. And I think that's what we're really excited about to explore with you and for this large funded church group, because they're so serious about it that they're going through and describing and implementing an intervention that has plenty of evidence that it's worthwhile, just like any other clinical intervention or well-being intervention, meditation, like whatever it could be. So I think from a statistical evaluation or that source of truth, to kind of go back to that initial comment that I made, it's worth the evaluation. And I'm excited to see where that holds and to see if this can't be something that opens up more of a conversation.
For sure. It's a fun project, to put it mildly. I'm in the faith camp big time. So, full disclosure there, that. And I have to ask this question. You don't have to answer it if you don't want to, but I gotta ask.
Okay.
So if we send you, this will be a 12-month pilot, right? The data is collected for 12 months. So at the end of 2024, your team's going to get everything from the data warehouse with all the prayer intervention data and do your thing, right? So it'll be what it'll be. The data will either show nothing, or hey, it made it worse, or holy moly, there's something here that we didn't expect. It'll be whatever it is, it'll be. Um, Here's the question. You don't have to answer if you don't want to. So what do you think how much do you think the industry would freak out, or maybe that's the wrong term, be shocked if there's a statistically significant variance to risk and cost when faith, specifically Jesus, is brought into healthcare, the healthcare stewardship equation? Is that a big deal in your mind, or how would you conjecture folks would respond to that?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'll attempt an answer. I'm not afraid of the question. I'm not afraid of the work. I think it's exciting, and I think it's probably overdue or past due from what really types of interventions can make an impact. And even the not get worse is a positive outcome as far as I'm concerned, right? If we're trying to not get up that mountain, right? If we stay somewhere, that to me is also positive. So I think people will criticize no matter what, but if it's a method that can be transparent and hold up, then I think you still have to accept those figures for what they are. And really the only way to combat it is to have more and more studies that are showing similar things, right? So one is one, right? And so to encourage more in the same type of rollout intervention with the same evaluation criteria and approach, I think is what will really hold the argument that there's something here, and that this type of intervention, this type of prayer, this way of conducting it with a wellness coach or a person of faith coach throughout this, that's the right way to make that impactful. So I like it. I think it's interesting, and we'll be right along with you to understand it.
Outside the box, it's fun, right?
Yeah.
It's easy to get just in the minutia of this industry and the work we do, and stuff like this kind of brings new life into it for sure. So needless to say, we were very thankful for you and your team, your professionalism and expertise. And not just, the prayer thing this is a project now, but there's 10, 15 years of a wonderful partnership with you all, and
Agreed.
You're very good at what you do. So we appreciate you without a doubt. Yeah.
Oh, we love the partnership. Thank you, Louis.
Any closing thoughts you'd have for the audience out there that's maybe new to self-funding or considering new strategies to manage a current self-funded health plan that you'd like to share? I'll let you close here.
Thanks. Yeah, I would just emphasize that this data is yours, and to find a partner that can help you with the skill set to bring that data in and to make sense of it. Some people make a career out of it, right? So it doesn't have to be your profession or your expertise to still benefit from it when you step into that self-funded, because I do think that that's the right approach for most people that are trying to deal with the rising costs of healthcare. It's the right strategy for a lot of folks, and to uncover and to find the right partner and to ask questions of your data. And no question's a stupid question, right? It's all worth investigating, and then just make a decision. Am I willing to do something with that opportunity? Yes, no, move on. So I would just encourage people to really dive in and find the right partners to help them navigate.
Cool. Well, Jenny, you're awesome. You're very, very good at what you do, and we're very appreciative of you. Thanks for taking the time to do this with us.
Yeah,
and
it was fun.
We look forward to hopefully reconnecting with you down the road. Maybe we can talk about an ROI study a year from now. So we'll see.
I'm looking forward to it. I'll be here. Thank you so much, Louis.
All right. Hey,
Take care.
Thank you, Jenny. Take care.
Bye-bye.